Alrighty. So we wanted to give a little bit of I guess, an intro on what we're doing. What are we up to?
Why are we here? What are we doing here?
And I guess the fact is that we've been meeting or talking about working together for probably about a year now.
Yeah, at least.
Yeah.
We had.
Go ahead.
We've been talking about wanting to do some kind of project. It's all started a couple of years back when we first met on a leadership program. We've been firm friends ever since, and we've always had this urge to do something together. So we've had lots of sessions to talk about what are we going to do, and actually we've realized we enjoy the conversation more than the planning to do something. So that stemmed a bit of an idea in terms of let's just have conversations, start there, record them, even if it's for us or anyone else that just wants to listen in and have some great conversations.
Yeah, and I know that both you and I sometimes tend to get caught up in the making things right and making them, I don't want to use the word perfect, but I'm just going to use it because that's the one that's coming up for me right now. Mm-hmm. And we'll probably at some point have a casual conversation about that. But this was kind of our way of just diving in and picking a topic and that we find interesting and sharing our thoughts and questions and curiosity around it. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good intro. So let's get to our topic. We agreed on.
Let's get on with it.
Get on with it. Okay, so we are talking about, seeing as how it's January 2022, we're talking about goals and New Year's resolutions and what we do, what we've learned along the way, and what our thoughts are on it. And we haven't really had a conversation around this, you and I, on this specific topic. So I'm really curious about what your process looks like. Because from what I have heard you say, it sounds like you've got a process that you kind of follow as it relates to this. So what have you done this year and what have you done in the past?
I mean, when we say process or process, as I would say in the UK, it makes it seem like some kind of really big structured thing, and it really isn't. And it's changed over the years for me, to be honest. But just before I talk about that, actually, this New Year, I do love New Year. I actually am one of those people that really likes the New Year, the process of whether it's setting resolutions or setting intentions. I think it offers, a fresh start. And I've been in personal development and coaching for quite a long time now, but even for me, I really enjoy that process of resetting. And I have spent a lot of time doing that for myself, both previous years and now. So I guess if I sort of look back a bit, in the past, my resolutions were very much, I guess, things driven. And often they were things like stop doing X or stop doing that, stop staying up late, stop eating so much or whatever. And it was quite focused on almost the negative. And whenever you're looking back at those resolutions saying stop this, stop that, I think we all know that's just really hard because it feels like we're deprived of something. And then more recently, probably in the past few years, I've really tried to focus on like positive intention, positive, but still on the doing side of things, still on the things like go to the gym, get more sleep. So a slight shift on the wording. And it worked at times. It worked at times. Were you going to ask something?
No, I was reflecting on the fact that I've done the same thing, and just how hard it is to not think about a green elephant if you're talking about a green elephant, right? So I've learned it's the exact same thing. If I'm like, oh, I'm going to eat less chocolate cake. Well, then I'm thinking about chocolate cake all the time, which makes me want to do it, right? Because it's on my mind. So I was reflecting on that.
Yeah, no, I totally relate to that. I totally relate to it. The thing that shifted the most for me most recently is actually going away from the whole specifics of the doing. So the specifics of the food or the sleep or, learning the instrument or whatever. And what's had the most impact for me now is really around intentions around, you could call it being or energetic state, which sounds a bit, out there, but essentially it is as simple as boiling it all down to what is my energetic state or my default energetic state this year. So for this year, for example, it is literally my default energetic state is confidence, high energy, and proactivity. Yeah, it's pretty much that. And I've not really had that as a resolution before, but we're quite a way into January. And it's actually shifted something in a way. And I'm without even having resolutions around specific things, every single day, that is my main focus. I wake up and I get into that state. And once you're in the state, everything else just comes from there. And it's hard to explain it to some degree, but essentially it's like a proactive state rather than a reactive.
Yeah.
Because when you're in that state, you can start becoming action oriented rather than reactive, which is where I've realized when I look back over all of the years of having resolutions and everything, all of those resolutions and goals always used to fit around external stimulus. Yeah. So, and they would always get quite a small amount of space, because we always get things pulling at us from all directions, even our own internal thoughts to a degree. So now the shift, what I've realized over time is that if you just choose one state or intention and focus on your energetic way of being and really channel that, particularly around taking control of your stimuli rather than getting pulled into other things. It sounds strange, but the more you do it, it's like anything, the more you do it, you will find yourself in a more creative zone. And that's what I'm really finding at the moment. Sorry, that's a very long explanation, but it's quite a hard thing to explain.
Yeah, but you know what I love about that is that, correct me if I'm wrong, what you're saying is that you're choosing an energetic state to evoke first and foremost, and then let things come out of that versus, putting forth an energetic state that you want to experience more, but kind of almost leaving it to the external world to kind of give you something that allows you to feel that way. Like you flipped it. You're like, it's my responsibility to evoke that in me. I'm going to start off by evoking it in myself. Did I get that right? Because I love that.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you really did. It's just around. It's what I've realized is everything comes from you could call it state of mind, but for me it's like state of being, your energy, your state of energy. If you've got high energy and you're wide awake, you're more likely to do gym, you're more likely to create something or initiate something. If you're low energy, you just want to put the covers over and you might respond to a text message or you might do the easy stuff. So for me, the key is getting into that state as often as you can, and just if that's your one goal, to get into this state every day, it's so much easier than all of the tick list of jobs that you need to try and do, each day of the week.
Yeah, it's reminding me of two things. One was this exercise that you and I did during the leadership program that we did, where we had the different colors, and you're evoking what the energy is behind that color, and learning not only to kind of read a room that has that particular color, but also actually learning how to evoke that, right? So you're talking about giving name to an energy that you're evoking in yourself and taking responsibility for evoking that. So I love that, because I think it's reminding me, one of my goals for this year, one of my let's call them goal, is to just have more fun, to come to work with more playfulness, more silliness. I think at my best when I'm just silly and don't take things seriously, and yet I have a natural tendency to take things seriously, or and so what I love about what you're saying is that it's reminding me that it's up to me to evoke that fun and silliness first, and then see what comes from it.
Yeah, exactly. You got it. And I think often we just don't know, when we've lived a certain way for so long, potentially living in a way where we don't achieve our goals or don't quite get where we want, it's hard to sort of see that that's possible. Over time we start to think, oh, this is our world, and we sort of it's almost like we're in a bubble. We can only see so much, and we think we can only do so much. But when we try and create the state, even if we haven't experienced it yet, we sort of shoot big. there's something about that process that really just shifts what your sense of what's possible. And that's what I'm trying, you know, like I said, it's quite early days, you know, but for me, it's really made a massive shift this year already. And yeah, I'll keep you posted. But I'm intrigued to know if you've got any other processes or things that you've done in the past that have worked for you.
Yeah, so I have kind of tried a bunch of different things, not only with myself, but with clients as well. But with me personally, I've gone through like a really in the past having like goals and making sure they're specific and broken down, all the things you learn about goals. And especially in my corporate career, I mean, that was a structure and a process that you kind of went through naturally through budget time and business planning time. And so I kind of took what I learned there and tried to apply it to my personal life in terms of having these very specific goals, right? And then monitoring progress and that kind of thing. It never really worked for me. And I think both from a corporate perspective, I found that we put all this work and energy into these business plans and then they sat on a shelf. And only when we were reviewing our financials with our stakeholders did those come back, right? And you're like, oh yeah, stuff. So it didn't work for me personally. And I think started to see quite quickly the limitations of it in corporate and business in general as well. And I think it's because I think sometimes when things are very specific, we start to lose a lot of our motivation along the way because we're looking at, okay, what do I want to happen at the end of 2022? And that's a long time to wait to see the benefit of an outcome, right? And so for me, I think I've leaned much more towards themes and what I want to experience. And I go through definitely a process of reflecting on the year. I'm like you, I love the end of the year. I still almost have beginning of the year twice in a year. I kind of have it in January. And then when the kids go back to school, it's still like a new year for me too, almost, right? So I like that reflective process of like what's happened over the last 3 months, 6 months. What do I feel like went really well? What do I want to celebrate? What did I learn, right? What did I do? What did I think was a goal that's actually not, I've realized is not really what I want.
There's a lot of value in that, right? There's a lot of looking back. I think some people forget to even look back. I mean, for me and you possibly, you know, as coaches and some of the work we do, it's kind of a natural thing to do that reflective work. But I think often people do just set a goal and they don't think, well, what worked for me last year? I set this goal the last 2 years. Why didn't it work? What did I learn from that? Who was I last year? And who would I need to be this year to achieve the goal? You know, what characteristics would I need to apply? What state, as I mentioned earlier, do I need to be in? And how can I clear some of the potential roadblocks this year that I experienced? So I like what you're saying. It's really important to do that reflective work.
Yeah, and you know, an example of a very typical New Year's resolution is like getting healthier or losing weight or getting more active, one of those, right? And so it's one of those things that tends to be in the top 3 for many people. And yet I think what I know that I've done in the past, and I hear it all the time too, is that like, oh, I failed last year, right? So now it's a new recommitment. But not often do I see going, okay, well, why did I fail? Which is what you're talking to. Like, what was it that how did I set it up last time that didn't serve me? Like, how did I get off track? And how can I mitigate the risk of me getting off track again using what I learned last year? So I find that reflective process like critically important before you even start looking at goals.
Yeah, I mean, it's true, because if you don't do anything differently, nothing differently will happen, will it? I think it's probably someone famous that said that quote, but it's true, right? If you put the same input in, you'll get the same output out. So it is really key to just say, well, yeah, where did I not go wrong, but where did I divert from my path last year? and for me, it comes back again to just taking charge, like just deciding, okay, like what do I want? Who am I? How can I practically take charge and like steer my ship this year in the direction I want to go in the vision, and not get pulled into the different routes that eat our time and stop us achieving those goals, like the phone, the social media, the sense of getting sucked into work, the partner that puts their demands on you. It's about just making a choice. I think like this year is for me primarily, and yeah, my intention is to put myself first, not necessarily in a totally selfish way, but in some respects you do have to be selfish, because when you can create and achieve what you want and be happy, you can then give to others, can't you? So yeah, for me it's about getting in the state and knowing that those obstacles will come, the challenges will come, the time suckers will come, and it's about really standing strong whilst that's all trying to eat at you. And again, if you make a habit of creating that state, it should be a whole lot easier. It's, nothing's easy. Otherwise, we would have written a book about it and made £10 million if it was that easy. But it's a start.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest pros for goals and having something that you're working towards, is that it does give you focus and direction, right? Like it allows you to say no to things. It allows you to know what is a distraction. It allows you to really look at what are your hell yeses and what do you need to say no to, right? So I think that's a huge benefit of goals, is that it does provide us with the focus necessary to make movement on the things that are important to us. And the other piece that you said around, putting yourself first, I know that often I have done this, I've seen my clients do this a lot as well, is that it's almost like we adopt these universal goals. Like we want more money and we want a bigger house, or we want more travel and we want more adventure, because that's what we see on social media. That's what we're supposed to want. And then when you start digging a little deeper, you start to realize that it's not really your goal, or that what you're doing to achieve that goal is actually going counter to the exact thing that you want today, right? And so I think that's almost like a warning sign for people as they start looking at what their goals is, to actually do what you just said, which is this my goal? Is it aligned with the values that I have? Is it, what's the process that I want to take to get that goal that's also aligned with how I want to experience life today? Because it's so easy to constantly be living for tomorrow unknowingly, hoping that happiness and satisfaction will come when something happens and it's attached to that goal that you have in mind. And yet the how you're getting there goes completely counter, right? Like I want more money because I want freedom, but I'm working at a job that I hate and that has me put in, 90-hour weeks. So I'm living completely counter to what it is that I think my goal is going to give me, right? And so it's a question to get curious on, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think part of taking charge, of how you want to create the year is also about taking charge of understanding your values. Like you talked about earlier, it's like some people I don't think actually understand what they really value. They might think they do. They might provide a stock answer because they'll probably just describe their life as it is a lot of the time, maybe because that's just part of the conditioning, But like you said, if you actually spend time really getting to the grips with what actually makes me content, when was I the most happiest? When did I feel the most myself? Or when I was having the most fun? Those things can kind of like do a good job, those types of questions, of extracting what your values are. And from there, you've got a really good starting point to start setting goals that actually align with who you are and not with the societal norms. And yeah, I mean, it's just part of taking charge. It's like, all the goal setting in the world, at the end of the day, it all comes back, in my mind anyway, to just being more of who you really are. I think we're all setting goals because we want to align more to who we really are deep down when we're at our most, I guess, strong or powerful. You know, we know we've got capability to do so much more, and the goal setting is part of that alignment, I think, back to what's possible. Yeah. And it's exciting, you know. We all get excited because we think, oh, we can be more of who we're meant to be, and it's, you know, it's great when you do it. The setting, the heartbeat is actually doing it, right? And that's where the systems come in.
Yeah, and I know for me, I'm focusing more on the how than the what. I think my goals, even a few years ago, were maybe more focused on the what. What do I want to achieve? What do I want to accomplish? What do I want, right? And I think now I put a lot of focus on the how. How is it that I want to feel? How is it that I want to have my day unfold? It's almost like, because I honestly, I'm not a big fan. I'm a fan of goals with handrails. I think there's a lot that happens in goal setting that can actually do a lot of harm.
Really? What do you mean? What do you mean when you say that?
So so a couple of things. So number one, I think sometimes when we set goals, we set them from a place of not having. So we set them from a place of, oh, I don't have that. It's like from a place of scarcity or a place of not having versus, and so it's kind of this, I'm here, I don't have this, and I really want this. And we attach some happiness and we attach fulfillment and some like this kind of in the future, once I have this goal, all this will be true. And it's not a conscious process, but I think what's flipped for me is like, my goal setting isn't about a what that I want to have at the end of the year. It's what do I want to experience January 1st, right? What do I want to experience all of January? That's where my goals are, is what do I want? How do I want my day to unfold? What's important to me right now? What do I want to experience right now? That's available to me, right? Which kind of it comes back to your evoking that energy, right? It's not about having something in the future that's going to make you feel better or whatever, something. It's about doing something today, right? That's going to have you feel that right now. So that's
it's so true. I mean, just on that point, I totally agree with what you're saying, because no one wants to wait 6 months or a year or 5 years for fulfillment, right? we kind of want it. We want it now or soon. And you know, a long time ago when I was introduced to the work of Eckhart Tolle, who I know we've talked a lot about Eckhart Tolle, the books. He talks a lot about the power of now and a state of, and the sort of being in the present moment. And obviously that's becoming really popular now in lots of realms, talking about presence. But essentially, I remember how life was, doing the mundane stuff and counting down the minutes to the end of the day, or finding lots of everyday tasks just so frustrating and boring. And since getting more, I guess, familiar with that work and really trying to channel that state of presence and seeing and just being really focused on one thing, you can actually find fulfillment in just regular day-to-day tasks, things that you used to probably find so mundane and awful. When you just switch the mind off and just get really present. And you know, presence in itself is a great energetic state to create from, because you push away the noise, the external noise and the internal noise, and you can get really just clear about what you want.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's been a huge help in my own life, just to notice the difference between living life in my head versus living life right in front of me. And I think that looking at goals through that lens of what do I want to experience January 1st versus some future outcome, there's a lot of benefit in that. And not to say that I don't think, you know, having a goal of a future thing is a bad thing. I think it's great as long as it's motivating you. What I found is that it's not always a motivating thing for people. It actually ends up being a demotivator because they focus on the gap between where they are and where they want to be versus enjoying the process from point A to point B.
Yeah, no, exactly. And you can trick your mind as well into, if you want to create something because it's going to make you feel confident or make you feel a certain way in the future, you can trick your mind to create that now with visioning, and there's various there's probably a lot of mindfulness audios you can download to actually try and vision the future. And a lot of that stuff, it really works because you can get into a state and trick your mind and your body into sort of experiencing it. And if you can start to do that, then in a way you get a sense of, you realize that actually a lot of the feelings you can create now. And if you start to create the feelings now, or create, even if you're tricking yourself and you're saying, right, I'm confident, or I'm saying something 10 times a day that I'm confident, I'm this, I'm that. At first, it might seem a bit weird and a bit old school, but at the same time, eventually it will start to sink in. You'll start to create the behaviors that you want. You'll start to experience the behavior that you want to create later down the line.
Wow. So how do you, this is bringing me back to your evoking the energy. So how do you do that on a day-to-day basis?
Good question. How do you do that? So firstly, I think, it depends. I think for me, I've done a lot of personal development, as you know. I've trained in coaching, various sort of things. So it's kind of easy for me to set systems and adapt to new systems. So I don't typically have that much of a structure to it. But in the earlier days, I would literally have daily, or not even daily, probably 5 times reminders a day in my phone saying, it would say, get into state, or change your state, like stand up, get some energy, get some motion, like run around, do something. So it could be something like that. That's what I've done in the past, but I don't need to do that now because it's just in my mind. Like my mind right now knows that my resolution for this year is daily, proactive, confident, conscious and present state, and a creative mindset. So all of that is wrapped up to me in just energy. And it's limitless in terms of when I'm having conversations or if I'm having ideas. The old me might have been quite limited in my mindset, and now I don't allow it. So as soon as the thought comes up, I'm like, no, I can do anything, create anything. And it's just a habit. Like the more you do it, the more you feel good, because you think, oh, it's quite nice to have a limitless state of being. And the more you do it, you think, well, actually, it's quite good. I'm feeling better. So let me just do that a bit more. And then, so yeah, every day in the morning, if you start to, the good thing is actually to notice if you're feeling a bit off balance or a bit funky or something. As soon as you feel that, that's a trigger to be like, okay, get out of it. You're in a state. You're in a negative state. Shake it up. Get up, move, go for a run, or just tell yourself, get the hell out of it. And it sounds kind of weird as I'm trying to speak it and articulate it, but it genuinely works. It's like anything. Repetition, consistency creates anything, right? One thing at a time. If you do it consistently, you'll create whatever you want to create. Yeah.
And I love that you had alerts on your phone at the beginning, just as reminders. And it's true, the more you do something, the easier it becomes. It just starts becoming part of the pattern that you have in your brain.
Yeah, it's almost like within all of us, there's these kind of little gremlins, I guess, or the negative thoughts, or some people call them saboteurs or whatever. They're all in there, and we've all got them. And there's lots of different ways to numb them, isn't there? You can find 100 different ways. But at the end of the day, for me, it is about like taking charge over those thoughts. It's being bigger and stronger than those limiting thoughts. And the best way for me to do that is through energy. And also we haven't talked about this, but for me, exercise and gym is like really important. I would say that is also an ongoing, never-ending resolution for me. It's always trying to get fitter and fitter, because I know what an impact that has on your state of mind. So I think if you're combining the two things and you're willing to do a bit of exercise, that is always a good partner of your mind, in terms of kind of creating that, getting into that state every day.
Yeah. And so this has been an ongoing process for you of kind of being able to evoke this, being able to realize when you're off balance, bringing yourself back. And so it's a goal that you have, and it sounds like probably an ongoing goal that you've had. Do you have any kind of specific goals in a more traditional sense for 2022?
I mean, the top one, as I've just mentioned, it is around fitness, and it sounds cliche because everyone wants to get fit. When you mentioned it earlier, I was thinking, oh, so it's not just in England that everyone has that goal of getting more fit, eating less, or eating healthy. So we have that, and I have it. But for me, this year, I'm getting a bit older, as every year goes on. So I want to work harder at the fitness. So that is really a key one. I want to be fitter by the end of the year than I ever have been, and so that is always my top goal, because I know the impact it has on everything else. So like every day I'm constantly thinking, right, how am I going to attack that thing? It has to be at the absolute top of my mind. I think for anybody that has that as a goal, or whether it's weight loss, gym, health, I genuinely believe that it does have to be the absolute top of your mind, because it's one of those things that doesn't just happen. Some goals can just happen, but those ones, especially if you're not used to being in that pattern of working out or eating healthy, when you decide that as your goal, you have to be all over it. It has to take priority. It's same for me, and it does, and that's why it happens, because I make it an absolute priority. So I would say that's the main one. I think maybe the other one is just around getting clearer on my sort of long-term business vision, I guess. I've got lots of thoughts around what that could look like in the future, because at the moment I can combine consulting with coaching, one-to-one coaching, and I've got a lot of other ideas. So I think I'd like to, by the end of this year, I'd like to have a really clear, consolidated view of what that could look like. Yeah. And in the past, I've held back on that because maybe some of the voices would come in, or I'd get distracted by some of the external stimulus that I talked about earlier. Whereas this year, particularly with the new sort of primary goal I have around energetic state, it's really helping me already to just see through the mud, see the clarity and all of that. It doesn't feel like such a hard job anymore. Everything seems clearer and more possible. So I think that's going to be my focus area for this year.
So those sound like general goals. Do you bring them to the specifics? You know how people always talk about being
measurable, like SMART goals.
Measurable, the SMART goals. Yeah. Do you use any of that?
Do you know what? I actually don't. And maybe it's because I've got a strong project management background, so I'm used to delivering projects in that way. But now I follow much more of an agile approach. It's more of a what's my general direction? Like what you were saying earlier, it's kind of more fun to just be like, how do I feel today? What's my urge? I know the urge is around business and shaping that and being the fittest I've been and being the most proactive I've been. I'm going to trust this year that the things will come from that state, and then obviously we'll have a conversation, I'm sure, at the end of the year and see what came of it. But no, for this year it's no specifics. It's really no specifics. It's about a way of being, a way of feeling, and seeing what I can create from that.
Yeah.
How about you?
I'm the exact same way. I don't do SMART goals for me personally. I look at fitness is an important thing for me too. I have that same experience where I know that if I just get my workout done first thing in the morning, I just feel better the whole day. I just feel more energetic. I feel like my mind is clearer. I just feel like I've done something for myself before I'm out serving, my family, my clients, all that. And so when it comes to fitness and nutrition, I don't have any SMART goal of being able to do a certain number of push-ups or any of that. I just want to be able to work out as many days as I can. If there's I've gotten into this habit where I just get up and I work out unless there's something really wrong, like one of my kids is sick and they need me or something like that. Other than that, I'm doing something, even if it's just walking, going out for a walk. I'm moving my body, and those tend to work for me a lot better. Like just having those habits versus a goal of I don't have a goal of losing weight, but let's say, people who want to lose weight have a goal of losing 20 pounds or whatever number of pounds. For me, it's always been better just to have the goal of, I'm going to work out every morning for 30 minutes and letting the outcome
Yeah.
kind of resolve itself, but learning, how do I want to do this in a way that's fun, that I can commit to? Do I want to do it with someone? Do I want to do it alone? Like, all of that kind of thing is more important to me. And even from a work perspective, even from a business perspective, and I was talking to, I mean, I've spoken to my husband about this a lot. He started a company from zero and grew it, and then ultimately sold it. And he never had like, I want to grow by 10% or I want to grow by 50. He's like, I just want to get a little bigger than I was. And here are the things that I want to experience this year. Here are the things that are exciting me. And that's how he grew the company, which is very different than my corporate experience, where we had a parent company that expected a certain return year over year. But I see, and I've seen the harm of that, where people make unhealthy decisions just to hit an outcome versus building something in a way that you're proud of, that is aligned with the, with how you want to show up, the people that you want in your life, like all of that kind of thing. So I'm not dissing SMART goals, because I think they have a time and a place. And I think there's a value to them, but I think in and of itself alone, in isolation of values and isolation of how you want to experience life and how you want to reach those monetary or specific measurable goals, they can do a lot more harm than they do good. At least that's been my experience.
No, I totally agree with you, because like you say, SMART goals have a place and they work well in companies, in certain companies, but at the same time, as individuals, we're not companies. we're human beings with feelings and emotions, and at the end of the day, I want to live and enjoy life, enjoy each day. As we were saying earlier, it's like, enjoy the process. You can have all the goals in the world, and in fact I've coached with people before. I remember a particular conversation with someone that talked about the amount of money they want to earn, the car they want to drive, where, by the time they get to 30 and they're early 20s, and what they would need to do to do that. And I remember just saying, but what's your daily experience of life going to be like in this vision? And it just shifted something big, because it's like, that's a whole lot of time to be only focusing on that. What do you actually want to do every day? How do you want to feel when you get out of bed every day? A day is a long time if you're in the wrong environment.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we're on the same page, really. It's about whatever goals you're setting for the week, the year, 10 years, really focus on or for me anyways, it's focused on more on how do I actually want to be and experience things, day to day. It's really important not to forget that. Yeah,
it's living for today rather than some future outcome that we think we will celebrate and finally feel something. And then more often than not, we are living today. I've read this somewhere on social media, you're living today the goals you had maybe 5 or 10 years ago, right? But we don't always look at life like that, right? We don't always look at, I'm actually in the place where when I dreamt of life 10 years in the future, I'm actually there and I've accomplished a lot of what I wanted to. But we often live based on the next goal.
Yeah, so true.
Rather than seeing how far we've come. And so we're always chasing this experience of life that never seems to come, because we take so little time celebrating what we have and what we've accomplished and what we've reached and what we've coped with, like what we've been actually able to get through. And we're always kind of looking to the future, which is great, which is why humankind has progressed to the extent it has. And, Rich Lippman says you can never have enough of what you don't really need. And that's true.
Mm,
We're always chasing something and forgetting that life is happening right here, right now, not
yeah.
someplace in the future.
No, no, it's tricky. It's a hard one, isn't it, these days? Because the world we're living in is so focused on achieving or obtaining, isn't it? You can't look anywhere without seeing, whether it's on social media, TV, internet, friends. It's that kind of, I need this, I need that, and like you said earlier, it shifts your sense. It has the risk of shifting your sense of what your goals are. Whereas if you get really still, which is a good exercise in setting goals, actually, if you get really still and away from all the external noise and just look a bit more inwards, you should get a better indication of what actually do I really need to make me happy. And often it's the simple things. I think most people, either they want a more loving partner, or they want more self-love, or they want to feel more confident, or they want more just more inner peace. To be honest, I think that a lot of the time, I think that's what people really want, but it's actually overshadowed with all these other things.
Yeah. Yeah. And then once we've identified what that is, what can we do today to bring a little bit of that into our life, right? And a lot of times, as you said, it's just almost like a mind shift. It's kind of focusing on the things that have us already experience that to even a small extent, and then building on that.
Definitely. Just a shift in mindset and state can change the way you view the current world, without even changing anything physically. There's a quote around that, which is something like, we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever, and to me that is just, again, it's about, well, if I'm in this energetic state or this mindset, that is what I'll see. That's how I'll interpret what someone says to me. That's how I'll react to something. When actually, if you're in a different energetic state and you're full of confidence or full of whatever, everything will look different. And then from there, everything you start to create new possibilities, and all the things you want start to come anyway through what is that law of attraction thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And there's an economist, whose name I've forgotten. I've just been recently introduced to her. And she speaks about, I'll look it up, and I'll make note of it. But she speaks about the fact, I think it's called donut economy or something, and how we've erroneously, is that's a word, right?
We'll go with it.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with it. Like, the economy is constantly growing, right? And we've just taken life as always constantly needing to be on an upward trajectory. And she says, in fact, life in general, ecosystems, nature is not about constantly growing. It's more like a circle. It's about rejuvenation, about resources, but they're not limitless, right? There's an end and a start to everything. And so I love that as almost a way of looking at goals as well, and our own mindset, which is, it doesn't always have to be more. We don't always need to be needing more. It's okay to be fine with where we are and how we're living life right now.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. That's why I'd always come back to what we were saying about being still and trying to simplify. It's almost like stop momentarily with the big dreams and get really still and ask, like, what do I really need? Like, what's the simple things I actually need? If I look at my world around me, my immediate world, my home world, my work world, what are the things I need really the most? And often a lot can come out of that exercise, that you don't even think about because you're so busy thinking about, I want the more money, or I want to get fit, or whatever. So it's it's a good exercise to do that.
So I'm going to ask one other question, and then we'll see if we're kind of, it feels like we're coming to the end of this. But there's one thing that's kind of coming up for me. So let's say there's someone who either owns a business and they do want to continue to grow, right? Like they want to grow, they've got kind of measurable goals. What would be our advice, I guess, to someone like that? That does have, even though you and I don't use SMART goals too much in our own personal lives, what would we give as advice as it relates to goals and people who do actually enjoy having SMART goals?
Good question. I think for me, it would be, yeah, if you've got your goal set, great. I would ask yourself, who would I need to be to create that? Who do I need to be in this 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, whatever the goal, to create that? And then if you want to drill it down, who am I now, or who was I in the last year? When I say who do you need to be, who am I, it's like, you know, what are the characteristics, what's the energetic state? I know I keep talking about that, but essentially it's probably the best way to explain it, because if you ask yourself that question, it really unlocks, it can be a bit of a light bulb moment to realize that, oh yeah, I can create it, but I need to be more of X, Y, or Z. And then it's like, okay, let's get about doing it.
Yeah, you're reminding me of yet another Rich Litvin quote, which is goals are a place to come from, not a place to get to. And which is what you're speaking about, right? Who do you need to be? Like, you've got a particular specific goal, SMART goal. Well, how do you come from that place already? Because that's your best opportunity or possibility of actually creating that for yourself, is looking at yourself coming from this already.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I think most successful people, some of the most successful people, I'm pretty sure they're not successful because of what they were doing. I'm sure some of it is the doing. I'm pretty sure a lot of it was how they were being. that ability to, on a daily and consistent basis, channel their state of knowing that their dream or goal is possible, and continuously chipping away regardless of that external stuff that's trying to knock them aside. So I think that is probably the key, and yeah, it's definitely something I'm going to keep focusing on for sure this year. Is there anything else that you would add in terms of advice for those people?
I think it would be underlining some of the stuff we've already said, which is one is question, is that really your goal? What's underneath that goal? What is it that you're actually searching for? Because typically a what has an underlying energy or a way of being that you think that thing will give you. So what is that? And then how do you experience that on your way there, rather than only hoping that you'll experience once you're there? How do you actually bring that into today as a way of getting there? Is that clear?
Yeah, no, it's very clear. Yeah, it's very clear. It is, and you know, I think also something we haven't really talked about this, but for me, something that comes up as well in terms of goals, it's like, be really clear with yourself and almost others in terms of what that goal is. It's really helpful to get leverage. I find, you know, if I want to really do something and I know it's going to be hard, I'll tell people I'm going to do it, and ask for accountability. Say, if you haven't heard from me in the next week, ping me in 2 weeks or 3 months and say, did you do it? And that'll always be on my mind. So if anyone's like struggling with that, I always tell them, get accountability. Get someone every day if you want, that you'll agree to check in with each other and hold each other to account. That's also a really good thing that I've used in the past as well.
Yeah, and you don't need to do it on your own. I mean, I'm kind of saying a very similar thing to you, but I think I know I have felt sometimes that I need to do it on my own, that if I do it with someone else's help, that somehow the goal is less valuable. And I don't know where I got that thinking from, but it's just not helpful at all.
Yeah.
And so
I think a lot of people have that.
Yeah, getting help is so important. Like, there's number one, nobody has, or I don't know, no, these absolutes are kind of hard sometimes to state, but nobody does something really significant on their own. And if they do, gosh, it sounds like not a way that I would want to achieve something.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree completely. it's so hard to ask for help, but once you start doing it and you realize, oh, it's more fun when you do something together. It's like, why was I not doing this 5 years ago or 10 years ago when I was trying to be that kind of that soldier or that hero, you know?
Yeah. Okay. So, bottom line, what are we saying? Goals, good or bad?
Good. Goals are good, and everyone, I would say everyone's got their own definition of a goal. For me, it's about more of a being and a state to channel that will then create what I hope I would like. In the past, goals have worked, and I'm sure they work for other people, but generally I would say goals are good.
Yeah, I think goals are good too. I think they provide us with a direction, and a way to know what to say yes to and what to say no to. And I would say they have worked for me in the way that they work. There's ways that I've used goals that they haven't worked for me, but I've really become aware of how do they work for me and how do they not, and then just double down on the ways that they do. Okay, so good. What are some things that we would say watch out for, or some kind of, or top kind of things to consider as you're setting your goals this year?
So I would say learn from the past. If it's a goal you've had before, really write down, think about what went wrong. How did I get off track? And how am I going to not get off track this time? Really ramp it up in the way that you attack that goal this time. Also, don't get too attached to the goal in terms of like it's life and death and at the cost of all else, because that can become a trap, and just get clear on like the why do I really want this. Get still and say, what is this really giving me, and is there anything more important that I want to address first before I get to that goal, which is actually my inner state, my relationship with myself, my relationship with others. Because once you get all that stuff sorted, everything else is so much easier.
Yeah.
they're the three key ones that come to mind for me.
Yeah. What would I say? I would say look at how, look at the how, make sure that the how is the process of achieving that goal is a process that you enjoy and can really get something that offers you a good experience, whatever that is. Make sure they're aligned with what's actually important to you, right? Ensure that you're kind of looking at what your values are and is your goal aligned with that, I think. And the way you know whether you're aligned with your values is you state your values and then you look at your calendar and see whether those values are actually reflected in your calendar. It's one thing to state them, it's one thing to live them, right? And is there another thing I would say around goals? Yeah, I would say is having a goal a source of inspiration for me, right? Like to ask yourself that question. And if it is, like if it's a source of inspiration in your day-to-day, a source of motivation in your day-to-day, then great, continue doing what you're doing. And if it's not giving you what you need today to enjoy today, then look at ways to tweak that process for yourself. And forget what the experts say. You can forget everything we say if it's not helping you. But look for your own goal process that actually does have you come alive, that has you be a source of motivation, knowing that you're not always going to feel motivated every single day. That's just not the human experience, but that it's working for you, and tweak it in the way that feels resonant with you. When you get still, as you mentioned, you'll know whether it's helping you or not, and then just tweak accordingly, I think is.
I think that's a great point. Yeah, is it a source of inspiration? Just that question, it automatically, it just triggers something internally, doesn't it? It's like, oh yeah, is it a source of inspiration, or does it make me feel a little bit like something else? And it's a great entry to some self-exploration.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I think anything else that you would add, Steve, or it feels like we're at the end of the arc.
Yeah, I think, no, nothing else I would add. Just take charge, get clear on, like you said, get clear on the values and start taking charge of the year ahead. And good luck to us and anyone else that's attacking their goals in 2022.
Yeah, and no matter what's happening around the world, because I know a lot has happened that's out of our control and hard to predict. And, we've seen loved ones get sick, and we've seen there's been a lot going on. Knowing that, to your point earlier, that we can get present and feel, have a certain experience internally, irrespective of what's going on externally, and knowing that we will experience ups and downs, and that's just a way of life, and accepting that for what it is. I think those are things that have been important for me to underline for myself, as we come out of 2 years of a global pandemic and enter another year where we're not yet done. So yeah,
completely agree. All right, well, it's been a great conversation, Lisa, as always.
A great first conversation with many more to come.
Hope so. All right, well, have a great rest of your day over in Canada, and I'll speak to you soon.
You too in London.
Bye-bye.
Bye.